All right, so they say you can knock out a pilot bearing using bread and packing it in the back of the compartment where the area behind the pilot bearing that sits below the gap that's between the bearing and the bottom of the crankshaft. So I packed it with bread, and we are gonna see if this actually works. It's all over the internet. It's crazy. A buddy of mine said he did it and it worked, so I'm like, dude, you know what, I gotta try this, because sometimes these things are such a pain in the ass to get out. And hey, what's a loaf of bread? So let's try this and see if it works, guys. All right, I took the camera out of time lapse because this is actually working and it's crazy. Check this out. I don't know if you can see, but that thing's actually moving up. This is hilarious. Pack it in there good. Anybody want some bread? You got some bread there? Here we go. I think I need some more bread because it's not out just yet. So let me go get some more bread. All right, we are back with another piece. I actually ate a couple pieces of this one too because bread's delicious. And what else but to use a 3T head bolt, right? There's some bread on the end of that. So let's keep packing this little guy. And it's already almost out, so this is crazy. This is awesome. Here we go. Okay, let's get that in there. All right. Let's get a little more. Let's get all these leftover pieces in there too. Okay, you gotta pack it real tight is the trick. So you get it in there tight. All right, here we go. Let's see if we pop this sucker out. Oh, it's going. Good thing I didn't eat this whole piece. Packing a little bit more. Yeah, that thing's almost out already. So this is gonna save a bunch of you guys a ton of headaches. It's funny because I remember my buddy Ricky in Hawaii telling me about it, and I was looking online just for, like, you know, just to get a laugh, and man, sure enough, there's YouTubes everywhere on this thing. So I was like, hell no. And I texted him, I'm like, dude, does this really work? And he's like, yep. Well, here we go. How about that? Ah, that's great. So there you go. Anybody that's got a jam pilot bearing, because you know these things are a pain in the ass to get out, you can buy some expensive tool, and if you don't want to buy the tool, you just use bread. So that's a little 3T hack, or any hack as far as Toyota pilot bearing. And then it's got to be tight as far as what fits in the hole. So this actually fits really good. Good bread. So this is what it looks like when we get it out of the back of the crank, and it basically just a bunch of bread. And I mean, it's really not messy. You know, grease is another way to do this, but grease is obviously nasty, and bread is no big deal. So clean the back of the crank and get your bread out, and you are good to go. Damn, that's awesome. So this particular crank, so a lot of times guys will want to dowel pin the crankshaft, and I tell guys that is an option, of course. It works, no doubt about it. You dowel pin the crankshaft to the flywheel, or flywheel to the crankshaft, whichever way you want to call it. Another way of doing it is, which we've done it for 20 years, you go to a bigger flywheel bolt. So if you look here, we have the standard 3T bolt. This is actually out of 4AG, but it's the same 10mm size. And I tend to put a 7/16 ARP bolt in there. So you can find these ARP, but I prefer the stronger bolt, the bigger bolt. 10mm is not very strong. And what I do is I drill and tap the back of the crankshaft to fit your 7/16 new ARP bolt in there. So that's the new bolt that's gonna go in the back of the crank now, and then this is the old bolt that used to go in there. So just something to add a little bit more stability. I don't dowel pin the crank when I go to the bigger bolts. You don't really need to. The trick about going to the bigger flywheel bolt is we get flywheels made, or even if it's a factory Toyota flywheel, more than likely this is not gonna fit in the factory flywheel bolt hole. So what I tell guys is you have to be sure that the shoulder of the bolt is tight against the hole in the flywheel. So same thing as a dowel pin. What that does, it eliminates the slop. So when you put this in, when you use your standard 10mm bolt with a factory flywheel, or even an aftermarket flywheel if somebody sells them, which we get them made from Clutch Masters, they drill the hole in the flywheel too big. So when you put your flywheel bolt in, and without torquing this down, let's just say one bolt, you can take the flywheel and move it back and forth, and that has a ton of play. That play is what will break the flywheel bolts on any drag, you know, pretty decent powered car. So when we go to the 7/16 bolt, I have Clutch Masters drill the hole in the flywheel smaller, where not even this will go through, and then I drill it accordingly to make my 7/16 bolt fit in nice and snug. And sometimes I'll take a sanding roll and I'll polish the hole just to get it to the right size that I want. So basically what I do is I'll drill the holes accordingly, I'll tap the crank, I'll put the flywheel on, right? I'll present the flywheel. When I get a flywheel, I'll show you guys how I do it. But then I put one bolt in, okay? One bolt. And I'll get it down to where the shoulder goes through the bore of the flywheel, and where it's nice and snug and you can't move the flywheel anymore. And then once you add the rest of the bolts, whether 6 bolts in this case, 3S GTE has 8 bolts, it locks the flywheel in place and you can't break the flywheel bolts that way. Same thing as dowel pinning, so it works the same. The shoulder basically acts as a dowel pin and stops the flywheel from having that slop, which will not break your flywheel bolts anymore. So just a little something for guys if they want something better. Obviously, if you have the means of dowel pinning, I've seen guys put 6 dowel pins. That's ridiculous. There's no reason for that. 2 3/8 dowels is good enough. Or if you want a bigger bolt, which I like also, which is more secure, obviously bigger bolt is better than this 10mm. I prefer doing it this way as well, and making sure that the holes in the flywheel are the size that I need them to. So little tech tip today: flywheel bolts, pilot bearing, and we are going to get this motor together.